As I go through the review, please make sure that you correct your answers and make a note of anything you would like to ask in class before the assessment. Numbers 1 and 2 are both word problems. The plumber charges $100 up front. Each additional hour costs $35. If the total bill was for $340, how many hours did it take? Define a variable. We talked a lot about this last year. Then write your equation, then solve. First of all, think about what we have in the problem. We have $100 up front. Then each additional hour is $35, and our total bill was $340. How many hours did it take? That's what we need to figure out. So my variable is going to be h for the number of hours. My equation is $100 up front plus $35 an hour for a grand total of $340. When I solve, subtract 100, so I have 35h equals 240 divided by 35, and I end up with h equals 6.857. So, how many hours did it take? It took 6.9, you could also say 7 hours. Please make sure that it is in a sentence and that you labeled it. Number 2 says the sum of two consecutive integers. Remember, we've talked about consecutive integers are numbers that are in a row. If I have two of them, that'd be like the numbers 3 and 4, or 5 and 6. Write an equation to identify the smaller of the two numbers. So if I know this, I know my variable is going to be x, which is the small number. And then my other number would have to be x plus 1. That's going to be my next integer. X plus 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. So the sum of them, x plus 1, so integer 1 plus integer 2 is 131. When I solve, 2x plus 1 equals 131, 2x equals 130, x equals 65. So, identify the smaller. The number is 65. That's my smaller number. You could also write that the other one is 66. Number 2 is solving different types of equations. The first one has a fraction. I'm going to use distributive property. 1/3 t plus 8/3 equals 15. When I subtract 8/3, I need to find a common denominator. I know it's going to be 45/3, so I have 1/3 t equals 37/3. To get rid of that 1/3, I multiply by 3 over 1, or that reciprocal. Multiply by 3 over 1. The 3's cancel. T equals 37. B. Once again, start with distributive property, just variables on both sides, which is no big deal. 5h plus 15 equals 2h minus 12. Get the variables on one side, numbers on the other. I'm going to subtract 2h so that I have 3h plus 15 equals negative 12. Move my 15 this time. 3h, I have two negatives, which will combine to become a negative 27. Divide by 3. Don't lose your negatives. Don't forget about them. H equals negative 9. C, once again, please watch those negatives. This is where you're going to make the most mistakes. Negative 6 times 2 is negative 12y. Negative 6 times negative 4 is a positive 24 equals, here I have some like terms, 2 plus 4. I can combine those right away to become 6 minus 15y. I'm going to move my variables to one side, so I'm going to add 15y to both sides. 3y plus 24 equals 6 minus 24. 3y equals negative 18 divided by 3. Y equals negative 6. And then finally part D. Notice this is the same problem as A. We have to solve it in another way. In A, we use the distributive property first. So in D, we're going to eliminate the fraction first. So if this is my problem, I'm going to, notice it says 1/3 times t plus 8. I'm going to get rid of this 1/3 by multiplying by my reciprocal right away. So I'm going to multiply by 3/1 to begin the problem. So I have t plus 8 equals 45 minus 8. I still end up with t equals 37. However, that's not the whole problem. If you keep reading, it says, justify which method is more efficient. So, as long as you can tell me which method and why, that's fine. But if you do not justify, it is wrong. I personally like the second method better because it gets rid of the fractions right away. That would be my justification. The next part is more focused on processes and vocabulary. It says describe the stages that are involved in creating the equation for z. So step 1 is right here. I noticed we got rid of this 3 and my 9 became a 6. By subtracting 3, by saying minus 3, you use the additive inverse. That's the vocabulary I'm expecting to see. The additive inverse to eliminate the 3. And we do that on both sides. Step 2, here to here. I noticed they got rid of this 4, so I would have had to multiply by 4. We use the multiplicative. Inverse. That's the vocabulary I expect to see to eliminate the 4. In step 3, they had to get rid of the 2. So once again, my vocabulary is use the additive inverse. And we could say to add to both sides. Making sure you're using that math vocabulary of additive inverse or multiplicative inverse. I would add that to my notes if I did not have that in there. Number 5, Patrick was given the following problem and was told to solve for y, or solve for x. So this is a literal equations problem. We have to solve for x. Look at his work and find any errors and then correct them. So the first thing is we have to identify where he made a mistake. I noticed right in step 1, his mistake is he did not distribute. Did not distribute the 11. That's his error. Now that I found that mistake, I have to go ahead and do it correctly. So if my problem is 11, x plus y equals x, the first thing we're going to do is distribute the 11. I have 11x plus 11y equals x. The next thing that we have to do is we have to put like terms together. So I'm going to get my x's on the same side. 11y equals negative 10x. It's negative 10 because remember in front of this x we have a 1. 1 minus 11 is negative 10. And then I am solving for x. So to get x alone, that means I need to get rid of the negative 10. They're being multiplied, so I would divide by negative 10 to get rid of it. So x equals 11y over negative 10. There is the correct answer. Number 6 is another literal equation problem. We have to solve for z. So it is a puzzle. Always get the variable by itself. If I need to get z alone, right now it's stuck with this division. So the first thing I'm going to do is undo the adding 2 by subtracting 2. So I have x over y minus 2 equals z over 5. I still need to get this z alone. So to undo dividing by 5, I'm going to multiply by 5. When I multiply by 5 now, though, this whole thing that's on my left has to be multiplied by 5. So z equals 5 times everything that was on the left, x over y minus 2. Here is the answer. If we did not put the parentheses around the left side when I multiplied by 5, it would be incorrect. It needs the parentheses to show that whole left side is going to be multiplied by 5. Number 7 says the density of gold. The density of an object is calculated using this formula. D equals m over v. Density equals mass divided by volume. Pla has a density, so we have a density of 5.72 grams per cubic centimeter. What is the volume? That's what I need to figure out. Of Pla that has a mass of 71.5 grams. So I'm going to put the numbers that I have into my formula and then solve for volume. Density is 5.72 equals mass 71.5 over volume, which is V. I like to think of this as a proportion. If I put 5.72 over 1, I can go ahead and cross multiply. By doing so, it makes it a much easier problem. 5.72V equals 71.5 divided by 5.72 on both sides. And I end up with V equals 12.5. Now, it is a volume, so I have to figure out my labels. 5.72 is grams per centimeters cubed. 71.5 is grams. The grams cancel, so the volume is going to be 12.5 centimeters cubed. Also, we know volume is a cubic measured item, so we could deduce that it's the centimeters cubed. And finally, we have a couple proportions to solve. That's kind of like what we did in number 7. So remember, we cross multiply. First one, I'm going to have 3 times 32 equals 24G. 3 times 32 is 96 equals 24G. Divide by 24 on both sides. G equals 4. Have my answer. And then final problem, we are going to cross multiply. The one thing is, when we hit cross multiply this time, anytime we have a addition or subtraction or a compound event going on, we have to make sure it goes in parentheses. So when I cross multiply, it's 6 times the whole thing, 2x plus 2. It's not just times the 2x, it's times that whole item from that top. Equals 12 times negative 4. Distribute. We have 12x plus 12 equals negative 48. I'm going to subtract 12. 12x equals negative 60. When I divide by 12, I end up with x equals negative 5 for my answer.